Hello everyone, Nicole Steckline, agronomist in Northeast Iowa. The wind chased me from making this video outside. It kept blowing over the camera, so we're inside today reviewing our planting season from 2025 and what we're looking forward to for the rest of the growing season, particularly as we get to making those post-herbicide applications this coming week. So really in Northeast Iowa, we had two major planting windows, and depending where you were, we had a smaller one. So our first planting window was, of course, that pre-Easter planting window. So there were some people that got started as early as April 11th, particularly with some soybeans, and that planting window lasted all the way up until the rain and the cold that we got on Easter Sunday, April the 20th. So when I look at that planting window in particular, what I find the most interesting about it is that the earlier you were, the better you were. So in my opinion, that really happened because it wasn't really the cold necessarily that hurt us. It was the heavy rain and the crust that happened following it. So the earlier you planted in that window, from April 11th up until about the 15th, that stuff, while had a slow start, it got up going sooner and was able to get closer through that crust before it really got hard. When I had to go out and look at crusting calls, the places where we had to pull the rotary hoe out, the places where we lost some stand due to crusting, those were mostly centered in the planting dates of the 17th, the 18th, and 19th. The three closest days to that April rain. So I really think a lot of that centers around the fact that it was maybe a couple of days behind emergence, and so it wasn't able to penetrate that crust before it got really hard. The stuff that was planted the closest to Easter, the further north you got, there could have been some cold injury there, but for the most part, when I was digging those seeds, didn't see a whole lot of chilling injury. Most of it was stand loss due to crusting. Now, a lot of people were very proactive. They got the rotary hose out there in time, and I would say that we had about a 90% success rate when we pulled those rotary hose out, helped break the crust up and saved those stands. Now, again, the areas that had that crusting were where we had the most water. So looking at like a lot of those Fayette counties, Winneshiek County, Clayton County, kind of that main area is what had the heaviest rain. Now we tend to think about a crust forming when we have a pounding rain followed by hot and dry, but that's necessarily not the only way that we get a crust. A crust will also occur when we just have very large volumes of water and standing water. So a lot of that people that got that 4 to 8 inches, those are the areas that were most affected by the crust. As I zoom my geography out, the areas south of that core area that got all that rain had much less crusting issues, and the fields planted in that window actually have pretty decent stands. So our next planting window was kind of spotty. Not everybody got to participate, but after that April rain, depending on how much you got out of that system, some people were able to get into the fields those last couple of days of April before we started getting precipitation in May again. So that planting window was really pretty good as long as you were patient enough and let the soil really be fit before you got in there. But again, if you jump the gun a little bit in that planting window, we did end up getting some sidewall compaction and maybe hurt that stand a little bit. For the most part, everybody was really able to rev their engines back up and get back out with the planters about that May 5th, 6th, or 7th. And from that date forward, it was guns ablazing and we were able to shove everything in the ground. Again, if you got in there a little bit too early and things were tacky, things suffered, we're gonna have sidewall compaction. But those planting dates from about the 8th to the 13th look really, really good. There was optimal moisture in the soil. We got a lot of heat right after it, and that stuff popped out of the ground super fast. Now, any of the planting dates later than that, before this last rain when we got kind of cold, in certain areas, if we were under full tillage and if we had some lighter soil types, we did see some uneven emergence from those seeds being planted into uneven moisture conditions where some seeds had enough moisture to go ahead and pop up, and those things are at V1, V2 right now. There's some seeds that are just starting to grow and germinate, and there's also some that are every stage in between. We also lost some seeds that died because maybe they had enough moisture to soak up and shoot that first radical root, and then it dried up enough and got too hot that it went ahead and died. But I would say that for the most part, our May planting dates look really good. Our April planting dates might have struggled out of the ground because of the crust, but people were proactive with the rotary hose, and we saved a lot of corn. Overall, I would say that replants are above normal for our typical, a little bit more replant than average because of the crust that came on the April rain. That is kind of our hindsight is 2020, look in the rearview mirror at our planting season, but now we get to look forward to our next big job, which is weed control. When we look at the forecast and we look at the fields, this next week, the first week of June, is going to be a huge post-herbicide spraying window. Now that also coincides with the awkward phase. A lot of people call it the ugly duckling phase. It's like, if you went through kind of an ugly, awkward phase, I know I did, when you're transitioning from being a cute kid to being a preteen or a teenager, you don't look the best, right? It's a transitory period. The corn crop, for the most part, is gonna be going through that this week as well. So give this corn a little bit of grace, because in that V2 to V3, it's still trying to live off of the seed and the seed roots, and it's not fully going to transition and hand off those responsibilities to the nodal roots till about V5, V6, and then it's really gonna get rolling. So we're gonna be going through this ugly duckling phase, and at the same time, we're gonna put herbicide on top of it. Now, while our corn plants obviously aren't gonna get killed by these herbicides, they still do have to metabolize it. So it's gonna be going through the ugly duckling phase. Prepare yourself for that. And we're gonna be putting herbicide on it, and it needs to be able to chew through that. Now, on the positive side, it looks like we should have enough GDUs, so we're gonna have good growth. It shouldn't take it too long to chew through the herbicide. Well, we've got a really nice forecast, and we're gonna accumulate plenty of GDUs to help that plant metabolize and chew through those herbicides. It's also going to be quite warm. And one of the things that I think about when we're gonna be spraying corn at 85 degrees and above, especially in high sun conditions, is I would like to set a little bit of expectation of crop response. So one of the really important things that we add to the tank with our herbicides are certain adjuvants. And it's the job of those adjuvants to get through the cuticle of those weed leaves to get that herbicide, to get it to penetrate into that weed so that we can kill it. However, those same oils and penetrants will be going and hitting the corn plant as well. So while I do expect, depending on your oil load, while I do expect to see some cosmetic damage while we're spraying on those 85 to 90 degree days, I do expect it to only be cosmetic, probably just a little bit of an oil burn, and I'm probably not going to be too concerned about it, but I am expecting it. The other thing that we need to consider is what stage is our crop and what stage is our herbicide labeled for. So we're gonna accumulate a lot of GDUs. They're also calling for rain like Tuesday, Wednesday. So we need to remember that we're accumulating a lot of GDUs. This corn is getting close to handing off to the nodal roots, and then we get some water and this corn is really gonna take off on us. So depending on how much water we get, we could be rained out of the field for a couple of days towards the end of the week. If we get a lot of rain, we're gonna be kicked out of the field for a long time. So if you're running a herbicide program that has a cutoff at, say, V5, V6, V4, make sure that you're going back out and re-scouting those fields to make sure that you're not gonna make an off-label application, because there are some herbicides out there that pose a higher risk for crop safety. And we also wanna be following the label so that we aren't hurting our crop that we're trying to help. That's all I've got for you guys today. If you have any questions, feel free to call, text, or email.